Tonight, no survivors, the tragic end to a doomed voyage to see the Titanic. A close shave at a Sydney barbershop, but it left a giant mess. A former policeman escapes jail after killing a motorbike rider during a chase. A 7 News exclusive, how politicians are working 2 jobs and cashing in big time. A happy day for these recruits as the top brass faces even more pressure. And a Bankstown dad wins $100 million all by himself.
This is 7 News with Angela Cox.
Good evening. The deep sea search for that missing sub near the wreck of the Titanic has ended, as many had feared. Searchers found what's left of the tiny vessel this morning, and the 5 men on board never stood a chance. Underwater cameras spotted the wreckage just off the bow of the famous shipwreck after it imploded. David Boywood reports tonight from St John's in Canada.
The rescue ships are slowly returning to port here, and the planes have been called back, aware now that their mission was over before it even began.
The debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber.
The sub called Titan imploded with such force, the 5 men on board were crushed in the blink of an eye.
They wouldn't know what happened. You'd be gone in a nanosecond.
It's one Empire State Building made of lead sitting on top of you at that level.
Disaster struck less than 2 hours into the 8-hour descent last Sunday. The titanium hull, probably stressed from previous dives, simply gave up, the wreckage sinking to the ocean floor 200 metres in front of the Titanic. It was spotted this morning by an unmanned mini-sub, beaming the horrific images back to the surface.
The size of the debris field is consistent with that implosion in the water.
This social media post shows the sub in the background just seconds before the dive began. Reluctant 19-year-old Suleiman Dawood was on board. He had to be talked into going by his dad, a Titanic fanatic.
This was not okay, and he was not very comfortable about doing it.
And this is a final wave from experienced adventurer Paul-Henri Nargelet before he boarded. Authorities are now deciding if their bodies will ever be retrieved.
Tragic, and it's horrific, and it's unnecessary.
Film director James Cameron has travelled to the Titanic wreck himself and has been critical in the past of OceanGate, the company that owns the sub and runs these dangerous tours.
There was a lot of concern about this outfit and this sub.
OceanGate employees who'd escorted the Titan on its final disastrous voyage are now making their slow trip back here to this Canadian port, where their company will face the harsh spotlight of investigators.
OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush was also on board. Relatives of his wife Wendy were among the 1,500 who died on the Titanic more than a century ago. Now her husband lies near them, and probably forever.
And with the ships involved in this mission now either back or on their way back, today an investigation into this spectacular technical failure aboard the Titan will begin. It will be a multi-agency international examination of exactly what has gone wrong here, and much of it will be driven by experts who for years now have really been calling out for more regulation in a deep-sea tourism industry that in the past has been accused of playing fast and loose with safety. Of course, all of that now very little comfort for those family members that have lost loved ones aboard the Titan, and the only small mercy out of all of this, if indeed there even is one, is that those on board died instantaneously, Ange.
Indeed. OK, David Boywood at St John's in Canada, thank you. Incredible video shows the moment a car veered onto a footpath and slammed into a barber shop in Liverpool this morning. The inside of the business was completely gutted, but incredibly, the driver and passenger escaped without a nick.
At Babylon Fade's barber shop, they're used to close shaves, but nothing like this.
I was a bit surprised. He's like, check the cameras, and then I check and I'll see there was an actual car inside. I thought it was a dream.
It wasn't. It was just after 7 when the out-of-control Holden skidded through the front, smashing the glass, cleaning up the chairs, coming to a stop in the centre of the room. Remarkably, neither the female driver nor her male passenger had any bumps, cuts or bruises.
You could tell she was shocked. She gave her, I don't know if it was her husband or her son, but gave her a hug, and I think she was just in complete shock.
Modi was in his family's florist next door.
Out of nowhere, just heard a big bang, and that's it, and just glass shattered and all that.
It was 2 hours before opening.
Very lucky. If there was, usually we have 4 barbers on that day, and probably 4 customers. And customers sitting on there were really busy there.
Not only is the driver lucky there was no one in the shop, but she's lucky there was no one around her on the road because Elizabeth Drive is typically a very busy stretch. So what was the cause? Potentially the combination of a slippery road and a heavy foot, but police tell us there's no need for an investigation.
No one's hurt, everyone's safe. Everything can get replaced, but the people can't get replaced, And
while insurers sort this mess out, Babylon Fades keeps cutting in Casula. Tom Hartley, 7 News.
A police officer found guilty over his role in a deadly pursuit won't spend a day behind bars. Jack Roberts was killed during the chase 3 years ago. His family today sharing the grief and pain they still endure as the officer walked free.
They lost a much-loved son, brother and father. Today, all Jack Roberts' family wanted was justice.
I think there has to be changes as far as the New South Wales Police go.
The 28-year-old killed riding his trail bike to work 3 years ago, struck and run over by Sergeant Matthew Kelly's marked police car following a pursuit. After the veteran officer spotted the father of 2 riding without headlights on.
Our son was labelled. He was made to be, a felon, a criminal, and he wasn't.
Today, Jack's family had their chance to share their pain.
My goal today was to give Jack a voice because for the last 3 years we haven't been able to do that.
An ongoing trauma, they say, has led to a distrust of police.
Sirens, police uniform gets you very anxious now and nervous.
Matthew Kelly had been a serving police officer for 20 years at the time of the incident, but he admitted during his police interview he initiated a pursuit of Jack Roberts despite having no authority to do so. Woods was found guilty of negligent driving occasioning death. Today sentenced to a 12-month community corrections order and disqualified from driving.
Do you have anything to say to the victims, Darlo?
I'm not making any comment. Thank you.
Taylor Aiken, 7 News.
A young couple has escaped a house fire in Sydney's northwest that sent thick smoke across the surrounding area. Emergency crews were called to Gables shortly after midday to find flames spreading rapidly. The fire appears to have started in the kitchen, leaving the home badly damaged. And a small bushfire has come close to homes in Sydney's southwest. It broke out at Minto shortly after 3 p.m, scorching around a hectare of bush and grassland. Firefighters quickly brought it under control. It's unclear if it was deliberately lit. Their pay freeze has only just become law, but we can reveal a growing number of our state MPs are double dipping and picking up extra cash with side hustles. The Premier today denied being a politician has become a part-time job, as he did his bit for those doing it tough in the community.
Out in the cold, Chris Minns becomes the state's first Premier to brave the CEO's sleep out.
To truly experience what life's like for, unfortunately, a growing number of people.
But some of his parliamentary colleagues aren't so willing to give up their day job. Of the state's 93 MPs, 1 in 10 is still a local councillor, drawing an additional salary of up to $32,000. 2 new government MPs have their fingers in even more pies, sitting on both the Local Government of New South Wales Board and the Council Active Super Board, netting Nathan Haggerty an extra $50,000 a year and Karen McEwen more than $120,000. On top of their backbench salaries and allowances, they're both taking home more than a senior cabinet minister.
So is serving on your government a part-time job?
No, I don't think a fair-minded person would make that claim.
State MPs are allowed second jobs, but once elected, they can't run for local council. However, New South Wales law does allow new MPs to continue as councillors until their term ends or for 2 years, whichever is shorter.
I thought that those time limits were about right.
Just this week, the government passed legislation to freeze MPs' pay. Disgruntled members telling 7 News the new caps will force even more to take on side gigs, certain to anger frontline workers as they continue to fight for a much more modest pay increase. Amelia Brace, 7 News.
There is a tense diplomatic standoff in Canberra tonight. A Russian official is squatting on land near Parliament House after Moscow was blocked from building a new embassy on the site. And due to international law, there's nothing local police can do.
The smoking squatter causing some diplomatic bother.
The bloke standing in the cold on a bit of grass in Canberra, we don't see really as a threat to our national security.
But his presence an apparent act of defiance after the government rushed through laws last week cancelling Moscow's lease on the site of its proposed new embassy, in the shadows of Parliament deemed a national security risk. Vladimir Putin's regime today filing a High Court injunction trying to overrule the law.
Russia hasn't been real good at the law lately. Russia has abrogated its responsibility as a nation state.
The man living in a demountable with power and plumbing, emerging only to smoke and collect food deliveries. Apparently an embassy member giving him diplomatic immunity from police action.
The Russian staff or diplomat, or I don't know his status, but whatever it is, should vacate the site.
As the government appoints the first national cybersecurity coordinator to defend against increasing online attacks, many from Russia. Air Marshal Darren Goldie looking to unite cyber and security agencies to produce better defences after the Medibank and Optus hacks.
When we do experience significant national cyber incidents, there is one person across government who is going to coordinate the national effort.
A hacker, counter-attacker. Mark Riley, 7 News.
The Prime Minister says the referendum on an Indigenous voice to Parliament will take place this year, ignoring calls by Peter Dutton to scrap it. The opposition leader says the proposal lacks detail and public support.
I think the Prime Minister has made a catastrophic mistake here.
There's no certainty, but it requires leadership. And if not now, when? And if not under my Prime Ministership, under whose?
The 7th and 14th of October are the most likely dates for the vote. A trial of cashless poker machines has been shut down after an apparent cyber attack on an outside software supplier. The West Newcastle Group believes no customer data has been compromised, but it's brought an early end to the local test.
It's been the number one change sought by poker machine reformers, but now cashless gaming has fallen victim to hackers.
I'm deeply suspicious about the timing and the nature of this.
A cyber attack via a digital wallet used in a trial of cashless gaming at a leagues club in Newcastle. The personal information of our members has not been compromised, but the trial's terminated, the breach under investigation.
I think attribution is nigh on impossible in close to 100% of cases because it's so easy to hide your tracks in a digital environment.
There are theories.
We also know that organised crime is in clubs and pubs laundering money, and the cashless trial is their biggest threat.
The trial promised by the Premier, 500 cashless poker machines in pubs and clubs around the state. Now he wants its security confirmed.
When there are large-scale trials that do involve cashless information and the personal information of the people of New South Wales, that it's protected.
As pokey numbers are reduced by 3,000, cash limits lowered to $500 on new machines.
And getting closer, the ban on external signage at venues advertising gaming rooms, they need to be gone by September 1.
Details of the cashless trial expected within weeks.
Nobody should be deterred at all from proceeding with cashless gaming in New South Wales.
Chris Marr, 7 News.
Police believe 2 Saudi sisters whose bodies were found in their Canterbury unit last June died in a suicide pact after being cut off financially by their family. 24-year-old Azra and Amal, 23, were found dead in separate bedrooms 3 months after receiving a final payment from Saudi Arabia. Toxicology tests have proven inconclusive. A coroner will now determine an official cause of death. The Police Commissioner and Minister have hit back at allegations of a cover-up over the tasering of great-grandmother Claire Nowland. Today, Karen Webb claimed those suggestions were offensive as the state welcomed 97 new recruits to the force.
Marching onto the parade ground, our latest batch of officers swearing to keep the community safe.
Faithfully according to law.
Among the new recruits, 20-year-old Tara Fitzgibbon joining her father on the thin blue line.
I just can't wait to get out there, step into his shoes and follow his footsteps and make him proud.
I believe she's been trained well. She's very smart.
But it's elements of that training that are being questioned following the tasering and death of 95-year-old Claire Nowland at Cooma last month.
I'll stand by. I lead this organisation with integrity.
The Commissioner and Minister returning fire on opposition claims of a cover-up after it was revealed key details about the incident were deleted from media alerts.
Well, I won't be stepping down, that's a nonsense. Police Commissioner has been very clear. The reasoning for that was because the family needed to be notified first. I accept that.
I find it offensive because it's not a cover-up. The fact that we took the time to speak to the family, to inform them directly of the circumstances, the use of the taser, shows that it's not a cover-up.
This is one of the smallest classes to graduate from Goulburn, just 97 officers, less than half the previous class. The police union says attracting new officers has become a concerning challenge.
I've always advocated for paying the students whilst they're down there.
Politics above the pay grades of these new recruits. They'll hit the beat on Monday. Andrew Denny, 7 News.
Charges have been laid against a 67-year-old woman who climbed on top of a coal loader in a protest in Newcastle this morning. She'd scaled the reclaimer at Port Waratah at around 6 this morning, unfurling a sign with an anti-coal message. Police took her down from the loader and she was refused bail. A Bankstown dad is tonight the envy of Australia, taking home last night's entire $100 million Powerball jackpot. The dizzying windfall, all from an $8 6-game quick pick.
He's the luckiest man in the country, and he's somewhere in Bankstown.
He felt a bit dizzy and even slapped himself just to make sure he was actually awake. He kept asking if we had the right person. Is he really a multi-millionaire?
Your husbands didn't happen to win the lotto last night, did they?
No. It wasn't me, no.
Can you imagine?
No. I'd probably have a heart attack.
The father's chances of taking home the jackpot, 134 million to 1.
He wants to buy a house and set his family up for the future.
In Bankstown, you could buy more than 80 homes, or perhaps your own piece of paradise. Pumpkin Island on the Great Barrier Reef on sale for a mere $18.5 million. And when it comes to international travel, you could afford to stay in Paris's most expensive suite for 8 years.
And how would you get to these places, you ask? Well, of course, you'd take your own private jet. And if you really want to treat yourself, you can drink the best champagne money can buy for the entire trip.
We can fly wherever you want to go.
But for most of us, all of this will only ever be a $100 million dream. Amy Clements, 7 News.
If only. Sally Barry joins us now with the weather. Sal, those showers this morning, they didn't last long.
Yeah, they certainly didn't. A brief burst of wet weather struck Sydney overnight, but the sun made a very quick comeback. But it did put a damp feeling in the air today with tops of 19 degrees, although it felt more like 15 degrees at times. Let's have a look at that band of wet weather this morning. The city picked up around 10 millimetres, Penrith a little bit less, 4 millimetres there. Across New South Wales today, there were some showers just through the southern ranges and also the western slopes, and that fell as snow on the alpine areas just above that 1100 metre mark. That is great news for the ski resorts. We've got school holidays fast approaching. Another 10 to 20 centimetres is also forecast to fall early next week around Monday. Tonight will be cooler across Sydney with dry westerly winds swinging in. We'll drop down to 4 degrees in Liverpool, 2 at Camden and 11 degrees on the coast at Bondi. There are some warm days on the way though. I'll have all the details with your 7-day forecast a little later, Ange.
Like the sound of that. Thanks, Sal. Mother and son escape as neighbourhood renovations go horribly wrong. After the break, a falling crane cuts a family home in half. An out-of-control fire fuelled by chemicals and recycling. The parking lot mistake that's led to major changes. Breakthrough relief for Australians with dry eyes. No surgery required, that's later. And an Aussie touch on an emotional day for King Charles at Royal Ascot.
As His Majesty wins the King George V stake.
Thank you for watching 7 News. A mother and her 14-year-old son have had a frightening close call after a huge crane came crashing down onto their home near Brisbane. Both escaped unharmed, but the 2-year-old house was extensively damaged. The crane was being used to pump concrete to an adjacent building site. The King has followed in his mother's footsteps, notching up his first winner at Royal Ascot. At one stage, the monarch appeared close to tears with the thrilling victory, provoking bittersweet emotions for his family.
They arrived to crowds cheering them. But it wasn't long before the King and Queen were quite possibly cheering the loudest.
It's the Royal Runner on the outside. Barry and King with Desert Hero has won for His Majesty the King.
The 3-year-old bred by the late Queen Elizabeth, giving her son his very first winner at Royal Ascot.
But all smiles as His Majesty wins the King George V Stakes,
ensuring a trip to the winner's enclosure, a feeling his mother knew all too well.
And look at the delight there, the sheer joy.
She had 24 Ascot winners during her reign. The King's niece, Zara Tindall, describing today's victory as bittersweet.
I think how proud and excited our grandmother would have been, the Queen would have been, but, you know, to have a winner for Charles and Camilla and, you know, keep that dream alive was incredible, and what a race.
A memorable day too for Australian trainer Chris Waller, presenting the King with the Australia Day Cup, which horse Chalkstream won in January.
He might get an Order of Australia medal for this from the King.
Who may just be on a winning streak. In London, Sarah Greenhalgh, 7 News.
Two of Australia's Quad allies are strengthening ties with US President Joe Biden, welcoming Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the White House. The red carpet was laid out for a state dinner, Mr Biden describing their partnership as stronger, closer and more dynamic than at any time in history.
Two great friends, two great nations and two great powers. Cheers.
Talks in the Oval Office reportedly focused on the country's differences on Russia and human rights. A factory in eastern Turkey has burned for 17 hours with firefighters only just getting it under control. It's believed to have started in a waste recycling plant before spreading to nearby buildings. The blaze fuelled by polyurethane. At this stage, there have been no reports of injury or loss of life, with dozens of fire trucks, tankers and helicopters still on the scene. A bridge known as the Gate to Crimea has been badly damaged, the result of a Ukrainian missile attack, according to Russia. The bridge connects Crimea with Russian-held parts of the southern Kherson region. Russia-backed officials say the blast was caused by a British Storm Shadow missile, which had been fired by Ukrainian forces. The first thing you should know here is that the grocery store worker wasn't seriously hurt. The 83-year-old driver was also unharmed after she lost control of her SUV in the parking lot of an Ohio fruit market. The shop owner says the 19-year-old employee hopped right back up and safety barriers have now been installed. Lucky guy. We're being warned of mass job losses across the state. Up next, the damning report showing how many businesses are set to shut or move abroad. The most affordable electric car we've seen about to arrive in Australia. Locals versus Lycra as tensions ramp up over the new Harbour Bridge cycleway. Bang for your buck at the Bowser. Our drivers put the big petrol stations to the test.
Ahead in sport, the season over for Tommy Turbo. Manly hatch a plan to replace him.
Legendary sailor and winemaker Sir James Hardie has been farewelled at a state funeral in Adelaide. Friends and family shared memories of his adventurous life, describing him as a hero of our era and one of a kind. Sir James passed away last Thursday, aged 90. There are shocking predictions about looming job losses across the state as small businesses struggle to cope with soaring power bills and rising interest rates. It's feared many will be forced to shut up shop or move away.
Out of the deep fryer into the fire. Suburban businesses roasted by interest rates and rising bills are having to lay off staff.
Everyone's family here. It's heartbreaking. I mean,
We're talking about the heart of the Australian economy here.
A new Business New South Wales report says if the government doesn't act now, 4 out of 10 businesses will likely cut staff. 9% will likely move interstate or offshore. Shockingly, it's feared more than a third will close. Other cuts inevitable.
I'm really having to pick through my business with a fine-tooth comb.
Confidence, according to the survey, has been trending down for a decade, plunging to its lowest during the pandemic and now.
We've seen confidence dive to levels that we haven't seen since the dark days of COVID.
The difference is during COVID, state and federal governments stepped in, and now with rising interest rates and power bills, Business New South Wales says governments need to step in again.
To stand up for small business.
This state will do its part to ensure that we're not putting undue pressure on the economy.
And in the meantime, businesses
just hold each other up and keep on going. 2023 for us is just survival.
Serena Andaloro, 7 News.
China's waging a war, not in the Pacific, but on Australian roads. Its manufacturers are locked in a heated race to bring the cheapest electric vehicle to our market. Network Finance Editor Gemma Acton explains.
And just about to become even cheaper to make the switch to an electric vehicle. This is the BYD Dolphin, an electric hatchback from China. It'll hit the market by year's end. Its base model valued at $38,890. Now that price tag makes it Australia's most affordable EV, similar in cost to a mid-range Corolla hybrid. But the Dolphin isn't the only Chinese EV making a splash. In fact, a war is brewing for the title of Australia's cheapest electric vehicle. The newly announced MG4 held the crown for just 48 hours, only for the Dolphin to dive in, undercutting MG by $100. The GWM Aura not far behind. They're well below the market average of nearly $89,000 and will only turbocharge a market already starting to accelerate. More than 32,000 new EVs have hit Australian roads just this year.
Thank you, Gemma. Queensland's oldest winery has been destroyed in a fierce overnight blaze. The Roma Villa Winery in Roma, west of Brisbane, was established in 1877 but had been abandoned since 2012. It caught fire last night, flames leaping 25 metres into the air, fuelled by old timbers and vats still containing alcohol. Police have declared the ruins a crime scene. Improved bicycle access to the Sydney Harbour Bridge is a step closer after plans were approved by the state's Heritage Council. But not everyone is happy with the Milsons Point ramp, some saying it's unsightly and dangerous.
It's a toll cyclists pay in paces.
So you're going to do this every day, twice a day?
Every day, twice a day.
55 steps, bicycle in hand, up or down anytime you cross the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
You must be frustrated.
Very frustrated.
It's a little bit difficult, but it's no problem for me.
Cycling groups for 40 years have lobbied for better access. A spiral ramp, a linear pathway, anything to just keep riding. Tonight, finally, a hurdle has been cleared. A green light from the New South Wales Heritage Council.
Now allowing the review of environmental factors to be finally determined.
On average, 1,800 cyclists use this path every day. Supporters expect that to double if and when this path is built. Residents say it'll be an eyesore and a burden to business.
If we're serious about cyclists, why not dedicate a lane at the bridge to cyclists?
That's not feasible, supporters say.
Too many motorists and too many vehicles.
A big concern for critics is the speed that cyclists will be travelling off the path and whether that will put any pedestrians in danger.
Issues to be revised if the plan's ticked off. Bill Hogan, 7 News.
A life-changing treatment available within days. Just ahead, the new technology meaning Australians can throw away the eye drops. More than $5 billion going to waste. The schemes to help you cash in. Urgent track work underway. The service disruptions this weekend.
In sport, Eddie Jones' invitation to Peter V'landys after luring Joey Johns to the dark side.
On Weekend Sunrise, Sydney weight loss drug revolution. The doctor's report revealing which one works best for every age. Plus, your perfect match. For just $150, the modern matchmakers making a comeback to help Aussies find love. And budget lunchbox makeovers. Start with Weekend Sunrise.
It's a condition that causes pain and frustration for thousands of Australians. Now, new technology has been approved targeting the underlying cause of dry eye disease. It means sufferers could throw away their eye drops forever.
Author Suzanne Gervais is currently living through the most painful chapter of her life.
It's too extreme. How do I find something to help me?
From the debilitating symptoms of chronic eye disease, inflammation around the eye where not enough tears are produced.
Historically, we've always tried to, with dry eye patients, we've tried to kind of add the tears back and use artificial tears.
But now there's a potential cure approved by the TGA. It's not invasive and doesn't require surgery. Technology using radio frequency, lights and lasers that rejuvenates glands that are plugged up, melting wax away.
It's used to basically soften or liquefy the oil, which frees up the gland, restores the normal flow of tears to the eye.
From 4 overseas clinical trials, 80 to 85% of patients were cured. But it's not cheap. This treatment costs around $500 and is most effective after 4 rounds.
If you look at what it costs you to be on a lifetime of medication and artificial tears versus for a treatment, there's a huge cost savings for that patient.
It will be available in Australia from the start of the month. Angelique Opie, 7 News.
A car has been clocked on one of Melbourne's busiest roads, doing almost 3 times the speed limit. The video posted on social media shows the Mercedes AMG doing 219 kilometres an hour in an 80 zone on the Tullamarine Freeway. The man who posted it online has since deleted it and says it's a video from 2 years ago and that he wasn't in the car. Australians could be missing out on cash after it was revealed there's more than $5.7 billion lying around in old smartphones. New research shows on average there's 1.5 phones for every person, each worth around $186. Many manufacturers and telcos have a trade-in scheme with users urged to check for old devices. The T8 airport line will be out of action this weekend due to essential track work. Replacement bus services will operate between Glenfield and Sydenham and Central from midnight tonight until early Monday morning. Parts of the T2 and T5 lines are also affected. Time now for a check on the markets with finance editor Gemma Acton. Gemma, it's been a rough end to the week.
Yes, and 7 days of gains now followed by 3 days of losses. And today's losses were widespread, with all sectors bar consumer staples and utilities lower. The Aussie dollar heads into the weekend a little shy of 67 US cents, while gold is edging back down towards 1900 US dollars. And economists at UBS track more than 60,000 grocery prices across Coles and Woolworths. Their data show fresh food inflation at Coles fell from 11 to 10% in May, while at Woolworths it rose from 9 to 9.5%. Dry grocery inflation fell at both Coles and Woolworths during May, with Woolworths the lower of the 2 supermarket giants. Ange.
Thank you, Gem. If you've always dreamed of a trip to Margaret River or the Barossa Valley, this weekend you can taste the best of the regions without leaving Sydney. At this year's Good Food and Wine Show, more than 600 of Australia's top drops and spirits will be available to try, along with more than a tonne of cheese with displays by some of the country's top chefs. It runs until Sunday at Darling Harbour. Are you getting what you pay for when you pull up to the Bowser? Still to come, different drivers, different fuel, as a range of petrol stations are put to the test, the difference it makes for your car and your wallet. Don't miss that story soon on 7 News. First, Matt's here with sport, and Matt, Ben Hunt headed for the Dolphins.
Not if we believe Wayne Bennett. Ange, good evening. The old Supercoach was as blunt as he gets about the Dragons skipper today. All the footy next, including the Women's Origin stalemate, demands for respect, and a 3-game series. And Elise Perry cut short of a ton, but majestic in the Women's Ashes.
Life again without Tom Trbojevic begins for Manly tomorrow night against Melbourne. Turbo needs season-ending surgery on his torn pec muscle. His replacement could be a veteran code hopper who goes by 3 letters, RTS.
His coach confirms the worst for Tom Trbojevic.
Tom will be out for the season.
Turbo's Origin 2 pec tear, the latest on a rocky road of shoulder, hamstring and pectoral injuries. Even a trip to the USA for treatment. Top priority again, the long path back.
First is first, we need to put some support around Tom. He's of the highest character, great integrity. His work ethic, not over-exaggerate, like he prepares like an Olympic athlete.
A rep game injury allows Manly to replace Trbojevic. Among contenders, RTS, former Rooster, Warrior and All Black, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck.
There's a number of names that we could look at. I'm sure he would be one of them.
SAC Manly coach Des Hasler may be taking over at Gold Coast from next season, but Seibolt's adamant there'll be no mass exodus of Manly stars to the Titans.
We know the environment that we've created here at Manly, and I feel as though you've seen improvement. Probably not going to speculate on that.
Having lost 2 series in a row, just like Brad Fittler, Craig Bellamy has ruled out a return as Blues coach.
I'm coaching here this year and next year. That's about all my thoughts are.
And if Ben Hunt wants out of the Dragons to go back home to Queensland, it won't be at the Dolphins.
I think we got a request today from the NRL whether we've been in negotiations with him or not, and that's a no, so we've got no interest in bringing Ben here.
The Dolphins host the Eels tomorrow. Andrew McKinlay, 7 News.
It's only a matter of time until Women's Origin is a 3-game series. Needing an 8 or more point win to save the 2-game series in Townsville last night, the Sky Blues fell short, winning 18-14. The Maroons were victorious on aggregate, but the sight of them celebrating after a loss didn't sit right with plenty of people.
Weird is the perfect way to describe it. Even out there, the Queenslanders weren't really celebrating. We weren't sure to celebrate or not. Obviously, it's devastating not to be able to retain the Shield, but I think it just speaks volumes on where the game needs to go next and give us a 3-game series.
It was the first series with 2 games since 2008. Another week out with soreness for Buddy Franklin, but Isaac Heaney, Callum Mills and Logan McDonald all return against the Eagles at the SCG tomorrow, live on 7 Mate at 4:30. Tom McCartan isn't far away, out since round 4 with concussion.
Just go over his situation.
So he'll play some VFL footy and hopefully be able to build up through there and come back in the team as soon as we can.
Jeremy Cameron will miss next week's grand final replay with the Swans after being knocked out in Geelong's win over Melbourne. The Swifts aren't bothered by their last round loss to the Firebirds, heading into tomorrow's rematch in the Super Netball Major semi-final.
It made you realise you're not invincible and that you are going to have to work really hard when we go out there tomorrow, and we got some really good intel on them. We got some great tips and learnings from that game. The
winner goes to the grand final. How about this? Andrew Johns coaching the Wallabies halves. Eddie Jones says Peter V'landys is always welcome too. It's 18 years since Eddie almost pulled off the ultimate Code War coup by luring Joey to rugby.
We had him, mate, but the board wouldn't approve the contract. We should get the CEO down here. What's his name? The chairman.
In club colours today, Jones will name a captain and cut his Wallabies squad to 33 on Sunday for the first 2 rugby championship tests. With all her humble class, Elise Perry added to a trailblazing career after 20-year-old Phoebe Litchfield made her debut with 23 in the only test of the multi-format Women's Ashes. Elevated to number 3, Perry made 99, 1 short of her 3rd test century. She averages 77 in 11 tests so rare they've taken 16 years to play.
Like any other time you get out, it's a bit of a bummer, but gosh, the game definitely goes on and life goes on for sure.
Annabelle Sutherland and Ash Gardner put on 77, leading Australia to 7 for 328 at stumps in the first 5-day women's test. And 41-year-old Jimmy Anderson's threatening retirement if the lifeless Edgbaston pitch is repeated again in the men's Ashes. Sydney's Grace Kim, one of World Golf's rising stars, is 1 under, 4 shots off the lead at the Ladies PGA Championship, one of only 16 to break par at Baltusrol. Adam Scott was headed for a 59 at the $30 million Travellers Championship before finding the water at 17.
It's a shame, but it's hard to be disappointed with 62.
Scott's 2 behind Denny McCarthy, who was centimetres away from holing out for a 59 at the last hole. For Rory McIlroy, after 232 events and 13 years on tour, his first hole-in-one.
Remember the name Victor Wembanyama, it'll be hard not to. San Antonio took the French 19-year-old as the #1 pick in today's NBA draft. 226 centimetres tall with silky skills, Wembanyama is considered the best prospect since LeBron.
I've dreamed of it so much now, you know. I gotta cry, man.
The clear best dressed winner, number 13 pick, Grady Dick. Confidence is a magnificent thing, eh? Look at that.
Fabulous. Thank you, Maddie. Does it really make a difference where you fill up? 3 drivers have put the big servos to the test as part of a special 7 News cost of living investigation. And tonight, we have the results.
Everyday Australians with everyday petrol pains. Meet Anita, Tia and Peter. 3 drivers determined to get bang for their buck at the Bowser.
I'm excited to see what different servos will have different brands.
They wanted to know if the servo they filled up at made a difference to how far their fuel would go. So we followed their driving habits over 2 months. Each used a different type of fuel. They filled up 4 times at different service stations and logged their mileage.
We want to make sure everyone's selling the same product, no one's getting an unfair advantage.
Mother of 2 Anita is filling up with standard unleaded, mostly using her Kia Cerato in trips between work.
I wouldn't imagine there'd be a huge difference. It will be good to find out.
Tia's next. She's using unleaded 98 on her Mini.
Usually a normal week is just to and from work.
And then there's Peter, the diesel driving greengrocer.
I'll be having a look around to see when I can try and get the best value for money.
So what was their experience? Anita's best result came from a Freedom service station, her worst a Caltex.
I will definitely weigh more on what lasts longer rather than price now.
Tia got the most out of her tank from a 7-Eleven, her worst a Shell, while Peter found Shell gave him the best result, with BP last.
Bang for buck driving around town and doing deliveries, and there were some substantial differences.
Our tests show there's no clear superior brand across the board, and experts say it's less about the petrol and more about the person behind the wheel.
It's the way you drive the vehicle, and so these results don't actually surprise me at all.
Drivers can get more out of every tank by following some tips. Ease off the accelerator and brake, make sure tyres are inflated and services are up to date, and limit the use of aircon and how much weight is in the car.
Reducing your fuel use by 15% across the whole year would see savings of around $400.
Money better spent elsewhere. Ned Balm, 7 News.
Sally's back now with the weather. And Sal, how's the weekend looking?
And the sun is set to shine this weekend with some warmer weather on the way as well. I'll have all the details with your full forecast next.
Tonight, 7 News headlines. It's believed the 5 men who died on a submarine voyage to the Titanic would have perished before they knew what had happened. A Liverpool barbershop is now closed for repairs after a Holden skidded out of control through the storefront. And the Prime Minister says a Russian diplomat squatting on land near Parliament House is no threat to national security. Now, here's Sally with Sydney's weather.
Thank you very much, Ange. Well, we saw a decent little downpour in the city last night after a pretty dry week, but just as quickly as it arrived, the rain was gone again. Today felt cooler in the city than the official reading of 19 degrees, and that's because we had those drier, cooler westerly winds. They really just strip the skin of moisture, so you actually feel the cold more. While the eastern suburbs in the city picked up around 5 to 10 millimetres with those early morning showers, the rain was lighter through the western pockets of the city today. Penrith and Camden also peaked at 19 degrees. Looking to the skies, the wet weather has now cleared out to sea, as you can see it just here. We've got a high pressure ridge just nudging in across the state tonight. That system's really going to keep the northern half of the state very rain-free across the weekend, while we will see a series of cold fronts just cruise through that southern half of the state, and that's going to trigger some showers and also snow across the weekend. Around the capital cities, if you're flying into state tomorrow, 24 degrees into Brisbane, sunny skies there, 12 degrees in the nation's capital, 14 into Melbourne, 15 degrees and some showers continuing in Adelaide after a lot of wet weather there across the state, while in the west coast, Perth, 16 degrees, also a touch wet. Let's have a closer look at our state for our Saturday. Daytime temperatures generally above average through the far northern parts of the state tomorrow. They'll be below average across the southern regions of the state. A few showers also through the southern Alps and adjacent ranges. It'll be dry and mostly sunny elsewhere though. A top of 20 degrees in Newcastle. Bateman's Bay heading for 19 degrees. Across Sydney tomorrow there will be plenty of sunshine. Tops of 19 degrees forecast through Liverpool and also Penrith. A little bit cooler at Terry Hills because it sits at that higher elevation. Western, 18 degrees there. On the water tomorrow, westerly winds around 15 to 20 knots and they'll swing more northwesterly during the morning. The swell's just sitting around the 1 metre mark at the moment. It'll be dry in the city tonight with light winds and lows of 9 degrees. Tomorrow, 19 degrees and mostly sunny skies are forecast. The good news is the cloud will clear completely on Sunday. We've got tops of 20 degrees in the city and also the western suburbs. A little bit windy into Monday though, but no rain with that. Tops of 19 degrees. The only sign of wet weather will be around Wednesday, but as you can see, Ange, it will be very light.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. Thanks so much, Sal. That is 7 News for this Friday. We will have updates for you throughout the evening. Weekend Sunrise starts at 7. I'm Angela Cox. From all of us here, thanks so much for your company. Have a great night.
Stream 7 News anytime, live and on demand on 7plus. And with 7news.com.au, you'll know the news now.